Hi, everyone. This is Renata Gomide. I'm very happy to be here today with Professor Amy Young. So I'm part of the Alumni Club in Silicon Valley. I'm the career chair. So if you have been to some of the events before, welcome back. If it's your first time here, very happy to have you here. So let me introduce our guest of honor here. So Professor Amy Young is a faculty member at the Ross School of Business and currently serves as the faculty director of the Center of Positive Organization. She's also an adjunct research professor at the Michigan Medicine Department of Radiology, where she studies organizational factors that fosters employee well-being within healthcare settings. She received her PhD in psychology from the University of Michigan. Go Blue. We're super excited to talk about creating a work environment that promotes well-being today. So over to you, Professor.
Okay, thank you. So the first thing I'll ask is if you could show your screen so that I'm actually looking at faces. What I do in my classroom, if I don't see faces, I call on you. Okay, so this may take you back to the days when you were in class and you got a cold call, but I much rather look at faces, and it just helps. It helps with the whole presentation. Okay, I'm going to pull up my presentation and we can get started. Let's see. Let me try that again. Okay, are you seeing my slides?
No.
No. Okay.
It's a portion of it.
Yes,
Yeah,
now.
now yes.
Now, good. Okay. And do you have a box that's blacked out? No. Okay. Sometimes if I have the other screen where I can see your faces, it blocks it out. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. So hi, I'm really excited to be talking to you today. I'm going to focus on how to create a work environment that promotes well-being. And that is basically what I do. I'm an organizational psychologist. I'm interested in creating workplace well-being. You know, I started as a psychologist, and you're working with individuals. And at some point I figured out that you change the workplace and make it, a very supportive environment. While work gets done, you can actually change and help a lot of people. So that's why I switched. So I teach the BBAs and MBAs at Ross, and I focus on leadership, communication, and the culture well-being. Also a researcher, so I am looking at the leadership and cultural drivers of employee well-being, but also I focus a lot on the organizational KPIs because that's what leaders listen to. So if I really want to make a change in the organization, it's important to connect it to the strategy and the outcome that leaders are looking for. And I also spend a lot of time helping leaders to create this culture of well-being. So the first question I have for you, and you may want to put this into the chat, but I want you to think about your work and which statement best describes how you've been feeling this past week. So 1, completely depleted. I am so drained, I no longer have interest in my work. 2, really stressed, but I can't stop thinking about work and deadlines. 3, not terrible, but I'm really just getting by. 4, my energy is good to get work done and feel pretty good at the end of the day. 5, I'm really energized and excited about my work, even after a long day. So please put that in the chat. I love to see where people are at. Oh, good. I get people all over the place, and I saw my dear friend David Fessel on here, who works at Michigan Medicine, and that's one of the organizations where I work. And with healthcare, I was seeing a lot of 1s and 2s with that group. So I get very different things depending on the group. So we kind of are all over the board, but the goal is to figure out how to get you all to 5s. That may seem a little bit crazy, but we got some people there. Yeah, so all good. All right, so let's move on to talk about why I'm asking you about energy. So now energy is thought of as the currency of human functioning. So when I'm talking about human functioning, I'm thinking about, are you psychologically well? Are you at your best in terms of creativity, cognitive performance, could be physical performance, getting along socially. So all of that I put into terms of human functioning. And what we found is that, we used to measure, look at employees in terms of engagement. Every company is measuring employee engagement, but now we're switching to think about energy. Okay. And partly because, we're more stressed and that's having an impact on our bodies. But there was this recent article about why Microsoft they've switched to measuring employee thriving, which is really about energy, not engagement. Okay, and you can see one end you have where you're feeling completely depleted, and the other end you are feeling energized. So here are fives and here are ones, and often we're right in that middle. So one of the things I want to point out is that across the board, this really picked up a lot with COVID. Across the board, the US population, as well as internationally, we're struggling, whether it's an anxiety disorder, making it hard to function at work, feeling lonely, feeling burned out. And 60% of employees are feeling like their job is the biggest impact on their mental health. And so this is something that leaders now are starting to take a notice. They know they need to address it to fix this issue, not only for the well-being of their people, but also in terms of productivity. So those KPIs. So what does struggling look like? You're not going to see it. It's not going to be obvious. What it looks like is people having more days off, or being late on assignment, or coming in and just not fully being present. We don't talk about when we're struggling, but if you know what to look for, you'll see the signs. Okay, so if you have an employee where you've noticed that something is a little bit different, a little bit off, it really does help to ask, hey, how you doing? I just noticed. And the fact that you notice really has a very positive impact. It says that they care about you. Leaders care about you, just to notice and to ask. So that would be one thing that I would point out. But really, if we think about it, we have to start thinking about the higher stress level it's going to be here to stay. I'm sure you've heard of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. It's only going to increase. So the best we can do is figure out how do we handle stress level better. And that's really what I'm focusing on here. So we were not designed this way. We're not hardwired to handle this level of stress. But from the science, we can actually identify some strategies you can do to really help yourself out with the stress. Okay. So we are hardwired for safety by being very sensitive to potential threats. So this could include physical threats, social threats, but you all probably know what it means to really have your sympathetic nervous system activated. You have high cortisol levels, you feel anxious, may get angry, and that is too much stress. Now, some stress is not bad. It gets us moving, but it's chronic stress that's a problem. Chronic stress is actually making it has a negative impact on our mental resources, happiness, and physical health. It also narrows our attention to the threat, and that actually reduces our ability, our cognitive functioning, our creativity, our collaboration. And so all those things we need in the workplace to do well, focusing on how to reduce that stress level will really be helpful for employees. Now, here are many strategies for addressing stress. And I'm sure you've come across some of these, relaxation techniques, music, hobby, therapy, exercise. All of these are very good. But I want to talk to you about another level where we're actually thinking about how can we change the workplace. So it's addressing some of these as we are getting work done. Okay. And so here, this is coming from, we're talking about elevating, workplace flourishing, and we're pulling, from the science of flourishing, and it really is, I'm pulling from positive psychology. So they've really focused on when are people most energized, uplifted, working at their very best performance. Positive organizational scholarship. So this is the part that the area of research I've gotten into. It's taking what we know from positive psychology on how we function well and thinking about how do we create organizations that promote this as we're getting work done. So it's not, you're not trading performance for well-being. You are achieving them together, okay? And the way we went about identifying how to do this was we looked at those who are the positive outliers. So we found the handful of organizations that were high in productivity, but they also had very high employee well-being. What were they doing that was different? So it may be just a few, but if a few can do it, that means other organizations can do it. So what we do is we identify what they're doing, and then we study, here's the pathway for other organizations to get there. Okay, and what typically happens is that, whether we individually are failing or, like our performance is, low, or an organization is failing. So, losing revenue, lacking efficiency. What typically happens is that we wake up and notice when we're failing, and we pay attention long enough to get to functional. Oh, that's good enough. We got it down. But what we found was that these companies that were doing extraordinarily well and having both well-being and performance high, they were taking it to the next level. And they were actually doing more, but it was actually different things. Okay. So the lesson here is that what will get you to functional, that's not going to get you to flourishing. You have to do some new practices, and that's what I'm going to show you. Okay. All right. So I like to think of the practices that have really helped organizations promote well-being are based on what's called the flourishing triangle. They're looking for positive emotions, positive meaning, and positive relationships. And so when I go into an organization and I'm thinking about how we can redesign how we're working, I'm looking for opportunities to incorporate these. Okay, so why? Why these? Well, they actually will activate this tend and befriend parasympathetic nervous system, the vagal nerve. And you may have heard of the vagal nerve, but what this does, it's not as sensitive as a sympathetic nervous system. It's not as, the sympathetic nervous system tells you, it screams at you, okay? The tend and befriend, that's going to whisper to you, okay? It doesn't really grab your attention. So what that means is that you have to be intentional to make it part of your day. And really what it is, there's a lot of research on this concept of emotional energy and relational energy. And this is what's helping employees really thrive, okay? So I'm going to go through how you create that emotional energy and that relational energy. Okay, but before I move on, I want to show you that we've done a lot of research at the Center for Positive Organizations looking at the flourishing triangle and the outcomes in terms of KPIs. And there's a very strong link to employee engagement, job satisfaction, team cohesion, innovation, team performance, customer satisfaction, and even financial performance. Okay, so Kim Cameron did some really nice research looking at financial industry and profit. And the flourishing triangle was really key in improving well-being and their financial performance. Okay. Now, if you're able to do it in a financial industry, you can do it pretty much anywhere. Here's a great book if you're looking for strategies on how to bring the flourishing triangle to your organization. This is the one that, I work with Kim, and we work together in bringing some of these practices into the organization. And the impact is that we're elevating positive emotions, positive meaning, and positive relationship. But I'm going to break this down, and so you can have a better sense of what I mean by the positive emotions of meaning and relationships. So let's now take another poll and see how you're doing. This question is going to ask you, how often did you experience positive emotions such as joy, amusement, inspiration, pride, gratitude, hope, or awe? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Rarely, a few times, about once a day, a couple times a day, often throughout the day. And again, we're looking for getting up in those higher numbers. Yep, again, seeing across the board. Great to see some 4s and 5s. Very good. Very good. It's funny how we used to think, when I started out in graduate school, the sense was there was no point in studying positive emotions because that's a nice to have. We really need to be focusing our attention on negative emotions because that's when people are distressed. And that, as a psychologist, our job is to alleviate distress. But what we've learned is no, positive emotions actually help us above and beyond getting rid of the negative emotions. Okay, so what's going on there? So here's what I mean by positive emotions. They've identified 10. This is coming from Barb Fredrickson. Identified 10 different emotions that are truly uplifting and positive: joy, gratitude, pride, serenity, et cetera, et cetera. And she's done a lot of wonderful lab studies to identify that positive emotions will actually expand your attention, your awareness of the environment, creativity, cognitive flexibility, and openness to new ideas and to other people. Okay. And that's what we need in the workplace. That's when people are doing their best. So they feel great, but it's also high in performance. They are performing better. Okay. So here in this model, what we're talking about is that well-being is actually the driver of performance. It's a whole different way of thinking about energy and performance and positive functioning. Okay. And it also, positive emotions actually improve our physical health. So they reduce the heart rate, blood pressure, and inflammation. All right. So what can you do? So these are some strategies you can do for yourself. So focusing on creative experiences that generate positive emotions. Now, here's the key. So if you try to make yourself feel good, feel positive, it backfires. You will feel frustrated. What you need to do is identify for you, what do you like to do that creates that positive emotion? So for some, it may be exercise. For other people, exercise, that's not going to make them feel great. Maybe music. Figure out what it is for you. And here's the other thing. You only need a short duration of these positive emotions to have the impact. So even, a couple minutes. So the strategy, identify 3 to 5 short activities that you like to do and put them in your calendar. Every day, schedule 5 to 10 minutes a day for each of them. So it's not requiring a lot of time, but it's being intentional. Okay. Now, what can leaders do? Now, leaders need to create the time to incorporate positive emotions. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time, right? Because we know you just need that short little dose to have the impact. So being purposeful, you could do things like create opportunities for your team to experience positive emotions together. So you might start a meeting with 5 minutes devoted to asking, what employees are grateful for. And don't be afraid to incorporate moments of play into work. Now, David Fessel, that I mentioned earlier, did a wonderful webinar for Center for Positive Organizations recently on humor. And I thought that was fantastic. Lots of great ideas. So contact him if you want more ideas on how to create this. Okay. Another polling question. All right, and we can, again, put this into the chat. So over the past week, how often do you experience genuine, uplifting connection with a colleague, even if it was a short interaction? So this doesn't have to be a deep connection. You don't have to be friends, just a short interaction that was positive, okay? So rarely, few times, once a day, couple times a day, or often. So again, seeing them all over the place. Oh, yeah. And one of the things I'm wondering is, we do have a big spread. I'm wondering about the industry and whether, because some industries are having a harder time than others. They are creating more stress, more demands on your time, high pressure. And I wonder about that as what that might be one of the reasons why we're seeing this difference. Law. Oh, yeah. Well, there we go. Okay, law needs to change because there's, no consulting. Yeah, okay. Healthcare. All right. There we go. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You need to get the data to show those leaders that it makes a difference. And that's why I do the research. I connect these practices to the KPIs. So whatever, that the KPIs, what the leaders are focusing on, connect it to that and you will get them to listen. Okay, so let's move on. So high quality connections. This is the work coming from Jane Dutton and Gretchen Spreitzer. And these are actually short workplace interactions that are energizing, genuine, and they demonstrate mutual positive regard. Okay, so even if it's an interaction in the hallway, as long as it hits these three, energizing, genuine, and demonstrating mutual regard, it is going to be uplifting. Okay. And with high quality connections, the research shows that it improves individual resilience and growth, increases sense of psychological safety, and long-term, it increases happiness and longevity. There are plenty of outcomes in terms of business performance. So teams, organizations, loyalty to company, high quality connections is one of the biggest things you can do to improve the workplace satisfaction, engagement, energy level. So I think of it in terms like this. You can think of it, how often when you walk down the hall, are you noticing people saying hi, greeting them, giving a smile, warm eyes, and really meaning it, a genuine connection. That's all it takes. Often we get so busy with our work, but it's being intentional, taking the moment to notice people around you. And I think we all came to realize how important people are with COVID. So let's not forget that these short little interactions are elevating us. They're bringing, that positive energy. Okay, so let's talk about what you could do. So high quality connections. So strategies for individuals. Take time to greet people when, at work. I also suggest this throughout your day. Greet people, you're at the grocery store. Take a moment to have a short little conversation, okay? It makes a difference for them and you. Another thing, notice when a colleague may be struggling and offer support. And always be treating others with high regard. So high regard, really you're showing human dignity. You are acknowledging them, you're validating their worth, you're showing a genuine appreciation for them. So that's all going to help people feel much more elevated, uplifted. Okay, and then for leaders, what can leaders do? Well, you could energize your team and, engage with them by being really accessible, authentic, and trustworthy. And what you're doing here is you're setting the tone of the culture where you can be more, it opens people up for more connection. It's okay to connect, okay? So leaders set the example. And when leaders engage, their team by being authentic and accessible, it will ripple out. Employees will engage others that way. So, for example, when you are walking, well, do you spend your time in the office with the door closed, or are you out in the open, walking around, talking to your people? Okay. The higher up you go with leadership, the more you need to connect with employees, because it makes a big difference in terms of their sense of feeling valued and their commitment to the organization. And the other thing I would point out for leaders is notice when you may be inadvertently setting team members up for an unhealthy competition or conflict. Okay, so this may be, how are employees rewarded? Are they rewarded for supporting others? Is that included in your, annual evaluation? To what extent they were supportive of other people, even though it didn't bring them any gains? Things like that, you want to think about from their point of view, make it part of of what you're rewarding in work. All right, and now one more poll. In thinking about your work in general, to what extent do you see it making a positive contribution to someone or something that is bigger than yourself? Okay. And we'll go from 1 to 5. Okay, seeing some middle. Okay. Yeah, good. And it seems like, yeah, like we're a little higher on this one. This is good. This is really good. This is good. Okay, so one of the things you can do, I'm glad to see it's really high. If you wanted to get a little bit higher, one of the things may be giving time to reflect on what it is that got you into the field, and what it is you value. So, for example, identifying the higher purpose and thinking about, a higher purpose is a sense that your life effort matters. It has an impact above and beyond yourself. So if people have goals that are really focused on their own performance, you don't get the same kind of sense of gratitude or uplift. You are achieving your goals, but it's not necessarily helping you with well-being. So really, this is about having a positive impact, and it impacts your life satisfaction, physical health, reduces rate of heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes. So it's improving you psychologically, but also physically. And really, some of the things that you can do would be, making sure that you are living according to your purpose. Okay. Are you doing something with your life that really matters? At the end of and I always think of it like this, at the very end, how do you want to be remembered? And are you spending your time that way? Okay. And it can be, you can make a whole career change, or you could do small tweaks to make sure that you're really making those connections. And the thing is that, purpose is really about, it's based on your personal experiences. So when I help students in the classroom identify what is your purpose, they really struggle with it. And I have them do a lot of exercises of reflecting the most important moments in their life up to 20, 25. And also their values, to really reflect on that, because it comes from that. And it's a lot of journaling to identify, okay, this is really my purpose here. And it is not the same as passion. Passion means that wow, that's great, I'm going to go out and do it. I'll put it this way. I get passionate about doing research and statistical analysis. And in the first part of my career, I thought that was enough to energize me. But I got to about age, 38, and I realized this is great, but, a lot of achievement is coming out of this. And I love doing this, but what is my life going to end up mattering? I saw a big stack of academic articles, and who's reading them anyway? So what kind of impact is that? That's when I started working, doing the consulting work, because that's more my purpose, right? To get well-being out into the workplace, so the people know about this research. Okay, so I cut down on my passion, which is doing that research, and do more of the purpose. Okay, but leaders, let's go back. I'm going to go back. So leaders, here's what you could do for employees. first thing I would do is tell employees how you see their work contributing to the team and organizations. So when I go into organizations and ask employees, so, how do you see your job, helping your team, or, the achieving the goals for the year, or, the mission, most of them can't tell me. They know the tasks that they do and what they've been assigned to do, but they don't see it connected to the overall purpose. And if they've been hired for a reason. They've been hired and they're contributing in some way to the organization. You can probably see it. So having a conversation of how you see their ability to contribute will have a huge impact on them feeling valued. Another one, do you know what your employees see as their purpose? So you can do all sorts of exercises where you're really exploring their life purpose. So I know of one colleague that I work with in the consulting work, Jim Alazzi. When he was a CEO of Prudential Insurance, one of the things he did was he had all the employees do the exercise of this, I believe, and they would have to write an essay and really think about, what do you truly believe in? And that took some time, but then they would share it with their teams and the leaders, right? And then the whole group not only knows them at a much deeper level, so working on those positive relationships, but you're also helping them with the positive meaning. And then you can start to see ways you could connect that to the organizational goals. Okay, so if they are able to be fulfilling their purpose while they're at work, that is helping their well-being, and it's promoting this energy, okay, that is driving performance, right? Because I was saying that performance in this model is driven by a whole different driver. Okay, you're not just getting rid of the stress, you're doing these extra things that energize people. Okay. All right. So yes, energy, the currency of human functioning. And, I talked about, here are the things that are often being offered to employees to work on stress and how to reduce it and to improve human functioning. We need to keep doing that. This doesn't mean that we're going to replace it. But what I'm saying now is that we can think about the flourishing triangle and how to redesign our organizations to be incorporating this as we get work done. Okay. All right. And I'll just add this one last piece, that positive practices in organizations not only increase well-being and performance, but also decrease stress and burnout. So what they found is that, yeah, it's helping with energy here, but it's also helping you de-stress, reduce the stress. So all around, it's a win-win. Okay. And with that, I'll leave you with, be intentional with your well-being. That is a big takeaway. Here are some practices that you could use to really incorporate it, but you're going to have to put it into your calendar like you are scheduling everything else, put it in your calendar, and there will be many returns. I used to think that, doing these types of things, well, they made you feel good, but that was taking time away from work, right? Now what I do is I always take a lunch period, but I'm doing some of this stuff, right? I'm incorporating this stuff during my lunch time, and it really helps. Okay. And with that, I'll say thank you. And I would love to hear any questions that you have, answer any questions. I'm kind of interested in those who felt like they were struggling a bit, like what's going on there. And I'm going to stop the share. And I would love to open it up to any questions you have. You can put them into the chat. You can raise your hand so you go to the top. I'd love to. And thank you all for seeing. I love seeing those faces. Thank you. So much appreciated.
Professor, hi, this is Gaurang.
Hi.
You mentioned about the vacuum part, right? And I think maybe the environment has become a bit toxic in some of the organization.
Yep.
And it's led, perhaps in my opinion, by the sudden increase in interest rates and big change in the whole economy.
Yep.
Versus easy money became tight money, right? And then every organization is looking at cost cutting while hitting the numbers that the Wall Street is expecting them to do.
Yep.
And the Vaku part, which is the volatility, ambiguity, uncertainty, all of this are, in my mind, very similar. And it's kind of created from the external environment, and why the internally people have just are adapting to what the external organization, external environment is.
Yep.
Rather than saying like, let's be true to ourselves. We are
Mm-hmm.
doing well. Many people see, oh, profits are good in a lot of tech companies, fintech, finance companies, and still they are laying off people. So uncertainty is there among people as to whether it's me or. So to me, the question becomes, they all seem the same: volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity. They all, to me, they are one and the same. Is there any difference between them and why they are?
Well, I think to some degree, ambiguity, you're not sure. Let's see. Uncertainty, yeah. Volatility, well, I mean, they're all connected. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a nuance, right? But I do think it speaks to our time, and I don't think it's going away. I like that point of, do we really have to be so responsive to, like what are other people doing? Well, I better be doing that too. I better be laying off. I better be and really being true to ourselves. I like that. There's a huge cost to laying employees off. It's outrageous, the cost. So to think about, well, is this really a smart decision? And there are some really good studies where this was with the 9/11 and how the airline industries managed the fact that, there was no flying, right? Some did not lay off, some did. And they did this great study that identified long-term performance. It was the ones that kept the employees that did better, which I found to be really interesting. And they were able to break it down where that cost actually was, where they were saving the money compared to the others that had laid off. Happy to share that if you like. What are some of the favorite? Okay, so well, my favorite, I always know I elevate myself by the connections. So I have a handful of friends, they're actually colleague friends, right? Who are good humor, you connect with them, you're guaranteed to feel better. I might send them a short text, I might do that. Send them a joke, that's one thing. I do like to exercise, or it might be a walk. It might be just listening to particular songs. So I have a catalog of songs. Okay, if you want to you want to feel this way, here's 5 songs, boom. But it is going to be different for each person. And so it's about identifying it. But really, don't try to force yourself to feel positive. It does not work. That's where we get that idea of the toxic positivity. It's really about structuring what you're doing. And if you think about all of these are about structuring what you're doing, right? Okay, how does this apply? Mikey, I got a great question. How does this apply in industries with an up or out? Let's see. Yes, so in some industries, it's understood that there will be a winnowing of employees, hence a survival of the fittest culture. I know some companies are going to be like that. And so, when students are graduating and they're deciding what company to go to, what I say is be careful what company you're going to, okay? If this type if well-being is important to you, look at the culture. Look at whether they value that. There are some companies that don't value that. They want you to, be on high performance all the time. You use your feet, you go somewhere else, I don't recommend staying and trying to change the culture. It may be too big. I do worry about the industries that, collectively, they still have this model. Okay. So I saw earlier law. I do wonder about law. I also wonder about, when I talk to my students who've gone into You know, the 4 big consulting companies, that's a high stress. Financial, that's another high stress, and they often leave within about 3 or 4 years. That's how long you could handle it. Okay. So you have to pick what you really prioritize, you know, and you can walk, you can go somewhere else. Other questions, other ways I can help you out.
I have a follow-up question on that one because I'm in consulting and I'm very passionate about like how actually wellness can improve the productivity. So I take some of my plus ones to go talk to people. Hey, look at all this research that people like you do, and try to convince people to do a little bit better in terms of like respecting the time, taking breaks, taking vacation, because normally people answer their emails when they are on vacation.
Right.
Do you think that there is any hope for industry like consulting or law or finance, as you were saying, to actually start looking at the research and think that, well, it's going to help their bottom line, or your advice that you just gave, I should be taking it? Like, don't try to change the culture. It's too big, especially my organization's like so big, it's like 700,000 people. Like, should I just try to find something different because you don't think that they're going to change?
I would not recommend trying to change the culture if it feels like you're going upstream. They're all going the other way. But I do think that industries are changing. So for example, I do believe healthcare is waking up because so many people are leaving, right? They cannot fill positions. And so they need to wake up. So you use your feet, you go walk somewhere else, you know, they're leaving the profession. You know, they're leaving the profession. It's too much on their physical well-being, mental well-being. And I wonder about law and at what point that may happen with law. You know, and I would be thinking about, let's say there can't be all law firms have that set of values, that culture. I would imagine there's some, right? They may be outliers, but it may be redesigning how you're going to use your law degree. You know, you may be able to really achieve your purpose or whatever by using that degree in a different way. And it may be thinking through what that might look like. And you probably would have to, you know, give up some of the income, but to what extent is that additional income worth it? And I don't know. That's a decision you got to make. Okay, Kelly, any ideas or thoughts about how move past conditioning from family, society, industry, and not being enough or not deserving happiness, joy, love? I am an overperformer from childhood conditioning of not being enough and working on ways to experience being enough and learning how to receive. I would say pay attention to who you are socializing with, because you can find a group that is really moving in this direction, that collectively recognizing that we are enough and to appreciate that. And it may be that you're in a crowd that is continuing to focus on this. I mean, it can also be, therapy is another way, but I do think if you could get in a social group where there's recognition that you don't have to you're more than what you achieve. You know, there's something worthwhile about you. They may like you for all the other reasons, you know, has nothing to do with your performance, right? So that might be helpful. Other questions? I'm wondering about the other industries besides healthcare and law that seem a bit challenging. Or maybe there are some industries that are really great for well-being. You know, it's interesting in tech, you know, there are some that are cutthroat, But I've also, a lot of my students who want to go into this type of work, bringing well-being into the workplace, the number one industry that are employing them is tech. Typically it's a younger generation that's really appreciating this, and making sure that this is part of, the workplace. They recognize the importance. So I do think this is going to change. And also with this younger generation that's now coming in, I don't know whether any of you have Gen Z entering your workforce. It's very different than millennials. There is a lot of distress, a lot of anxiety, depression, feeling isolated. And so there's going to need to be more attention to these things to help out that group. Oh yeah, okay. Mike, is it possible to have a culture where there's too much focus on well-being such that everyone gets along? Yes, absolutely. But the overall organization, absolutely. So I think of it in terms of, it's a match between, I don't know if you've heard of the competing values framework, but you might want to look that up. So the point is that you need to have, there are 4 different values. One is about valuing people. Another is about performance and getting things done. And there's a tension between those 2, right? And you need to find that balance, right? And the goal is, how can we align everyone and bring them together where they feel included to work towards productivity, okay? And as opposed, because it can be where people are not having the difficult conversations they need to have. They're, not keeping an eye on performance. They're not, so it may be things like, I've noticed that your performance isn't there yet. I want you to succeed in this organization. I care about you. What can I do to help you? Because we collectively need to move our performance, right? So you are aligning with them towards performance. It's not in spite of. I mean, if you're not paying attention to performance, your organization's not going to survive. There are no jobs, right? You have to be paying attention to that. But it's the balance. It's the balance. The other 2 that have tensions would be innovation and creativity, with having some processes, efficiencies, all the things that you have with larger organizations. So those 2 are at odds too. But I would recommend looking that up, competing values framework. And a lot of when I am, working with leaders, it's not just let's be happy and have well-being. It's how are we doing that while still hitting, all of the KPIs. You can't ignore them. So that's where it takes a little bit of work and thinking through, how could we redo this, but we're still moving towards the goals that we need to meet.
Do you have any suggestions on how to really test the companies if you are considering changing industries or moving to a different job, to make sure that they are actually following the triangle that you build? Because I think like sometimes when you go through the interviews that they want to attract you, they're going to say, oh yeah, it's a lot of collaboration.
Oh yeah.
They have these beautiful values in their website. And when you get there, the reality is completely different. So like, how do you test them?
Yep. I would say actually going to the organization, which now may be a little bit harder, now we're more virtual. You can feel it. You can feel it. Are people happy to be there? Are they energized? Or is there this tension? Trust your instinct. So that's the first thing I would say. And then it is talking to people. When you go through that interview process, have as many questions for them about it as they have for you, and really, be direct in asking about it. And you could be asking, like, how is this company supporting my well-being? And if they're only talking about, well, we have these programs that you can go do, has nothing to do with us getting work done, right? You know, that's not going to be enough. Yes, Dicey, am I saying it right?
Jesse, hi, how are
Jesse,
you?
okay, yeah.
Thank you, Amy. That's very, very helpful. I really appreciate it. So my question, a lot of this, I think, has to do with one's emotional intelligence.
Yep.
So any thoughts in terms of folks who don't have high EQ? I mean, I think they're going to miss a lot of things that
they're going to miss a lot of things. Yeah, and
those folks.
I would say, you know, the area that like the classes that I teach, it's all about emotional intelligence. That's really what it's about. You can learn these things if you want to. And so I think the first step is, does the person recognize they're missing something? Okay. And typically, you know, like if they didn't get it, you know, when they were in business school, right, which there are many that slip through, it's a midlife, and often they're not being promoted up to the next level because they're missing these skills, because they are so important for leadership. Okay. And so that's when, you know, they come back for exec ed, right? But you can learn these things. It begins with really caring about it, wanting to learn about it. And there are all sorts of programs to expand emotional intelligence. So you can look them up online. You know, so those are, they're a dime a dozen. I'm trying to think. I know Goldman he has a lot if you look on his website. And I've looked at many different ones, and they seem to be touching on all the same things and very much the same things that I teach in my classes. But it begins with wanting to.
Right. So I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. Do you do conference keynoting?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll reach out. Yep,
would love to. Other questions or curiosities you have? Okay, well, very good. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. It was a great group. Glad to see the faces there. And thank you, David. Yeah. Yeah, good luck with bringing some of this in. If you don't hesitate to reach out, you know, I still consider you part of the Go Blue family, you know, so we always look out for each other. So feel free to reach out to me. I'll pass along the slides that has the contact information.
Thank you for being here with us. That has been a phenomenal session. I think that everybody needs to remember some of those areas that you touched in. So thank you. And thanks for everybody who joined as well. And Go Blue, stay tuned for the next events. So if you can share the slides, I'll share with everybody. The video is going to be in our YouTube channel. So everybody who joined is going to receive an email with everything. So
good. Jacob, I saw you had a hand raised. Was that previous?
Oh no, that was applause.
Oh, applause. Okay. Thank you for the applause. Okay. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Go Blue.